Scripture 101, Session 6, the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch is also known as the Torah, the Law, the books of Moses. We are referring to the first 5 books in the canon of our Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. How do we approach the Pentateuch? It should be read as a whole story, but as we are reading it, we need to be aware of the different literary forms that are employed. It is not history as we know it. It is a faith or interpreted history, focusing much more on what this means rather than what actually happened. An outline of the book of Genesis. First point is that the story really begins with Abraham in chapter 12. Everything before that is prequel. Stories that are meant to explain how we got to this point. The stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph and his brothers are the stories of the patriarchs, the great names in our family history. These stories would have been passed on orally from generation to generation. The book of Exodus begins with God's people in Egypt and describing their condition, and God calling Moses to lead them out. And so in these first 12 chapters, we have the story of the plagues, the actual departure from Egypt itself. Then the journey to Mount Sinai, which includes the crossing of the Red Sea. While at Sinai, the commandments and the covenant are given to the people. We also find that they have fallen into idolatry while Moses is up on the mountain. Then the description of the dwelling. Leviticus is named after the priestly family of Levi, and it deals with the details of priestly life and their role in the life of the people. The rituals of sacrifice and the different types of sacrifice that are to be offered. How the priests are to be set apart. What constitutes legal purity so that they may enter into worship of God. A description of the holiness code, and then a redemption of offerings. The book of Numbers picks up the story where Exodus left off. The people are now preparing for their departure from Sinai. From Sinai, they travel to the plains of Moab. This is the 40-year part of their time in the desert. This is the consequence of their sin, that sinful generation would not enter the promised land. It concludes with them reaching the plains of Moab, just across the river Jordan from the promised land. The book of Deuteronomy begins with a historical review, a reminder of the covenant. Then an exposition of the law, and the final words of Moses, who will die without entering the promised land. One of the biblical tools that we use in studying the Pentateuch is redaction criticism. It seeks to identify the editors and their influence on the text. Scholars have recognized multiple editors at work. There are 4 that they have identified, and the particular characteristics of each of them. The J editor, or Yahwist, because he uses the name Yahweh for God. And he describes God in very anthropomorphic images. God is down to earth and visits his people. The E, or Elohist source, uses the name El for God, as in El Shaddai, Elohim. And for him, God is all holy and is in the heavens. And he only communicates with humans through dreams and through angels. Now, we're going to recognize in an English translation the use of the word Lord when it's the Yahwist source, and the word God when it's the Elohist. The D author is the Deuteronomist, and the book of Deuteronomy is his principal contribution. In our next section, we're going to see that influence extends into another 6 books of the Old Testament. But primarily, we find his work only in the book of Deuteronomy, here in the Pentateuch. The last editor to have influence is the P, or priestly editor. And he is concerned with the matters that priests would be concerned with. Among the 2 creation stories, the first creation story is the work of the priestly editor. There is order in creation. There is the 7-day week in which God rests on the 7th day, the Sabbath, because the priest is concerned with preserving the Sabbath traditions. So, just a little more overview coming in the film clip attached.